Greetings and salutations, and thank you guys for joining me for another video. This is number 2 in my 4-part series. I'm looking at fantasy football MVPs. In the video, I'm going to look at my top 5 overperformers. I also want to deep dive into why exactly they did that. So what makes someone an MVP is not only overperforming your draft position, but I want to look at the whys behind that. Hopefully we can take that information and use it moving forward for next season's draft. Now I am going off of my rankings and not the consensus, so this might vary a little bit depending on whose rankings that you were looking at, but I'm going to go over my top 5 running backs in this video. I'm also going over a bonus player. I would love to hear about your guys' fantasy MVPs as well, so please drop those in the comments down below. We could celebrate them all together. To kick this one off, I am going with Josh Jacobs. Now I had him as running back 24 to start the season. Jacobs finished as a top 3 option, and I'm going to be completely honest, because it's obvious, I was way off on Jacobs. I bought the Zamir White hype in the preseason. I felt there was a reason that the Raiders did not extend Jacobs. I also looked at his production from last year and that horrible offensive line in front of him, and I faded him prior to draft day. I missed out big time because all of that was just smoke that did not matter. Jacobs ended up being one of the most consistent producers in all of fantasy, regardless of position. He never missed a game. He produced top 10 finishes in over half of his outing, and he only dropped outside of the top 25 5 times all season long. Considering the dumpster fire that Vegas was for most of the year, it was a very impressive season. His run from week 10 to week 14, all of those being top 8 performances, likely cemented a playoff spot for you, if not the top seed overall. Jacobs underwhelmed to start the fantasy playoffs, so that's a little bit of a knock for him. That was far from ideal from owners. However, he came back with a vengeance in the title game. After slipping in many drafts, Jacobs ended up being one of the biggest steals that you could find. He was a league winner without a doubt. The next running back who could have been a big-time MVP for you was Miles Sanders. I had him just inside of my top 25. He finished as an RB1 in the top 12. I forgive myself here because few of us saw this coming. For the entire career, coming into 2022, Sanders was famously efficient but forever underutilized. The Eagles just refused to make him a centerpiece or even the major part of this offense. The reasons why that was may not ever be known, but that philosophy changed this year and the results speak for themselves. RB1 in the season, double-digit tutties, and over 1,300 total yards. Sanders was certainly a little hard to trust at times because his touch count fluctuated based on what Philly was trying to take advantage of in any given week. But if you rode the wave week in and week out, you won it more often than not. Sanders posted 5 touchdowns in the 3 weeks leading up to the playoffs, giving managers the boost that they needed to lock in the spot. Now, an understandable gripe is how he finished the year, hurting his owners. He had 3 straight sub-35 finishes, but the full body of work here earns him a spot on this list. Tony Pollard is up next. I had him as RB28 going into the draft process. He actually finished as the RB7 overall. The hashtag free Tony Pollard movement that I started way back in week number 5 ended up coming to fruition, so you are welcome, Jerry Jones. The talent here was never in question, but just like Sanders, the opportunities were. Zeke did not go down for long, but it was enough to showcase to the world the talent that this kid possesses. Jerry World could no longer hide it behind 1-yard touchdown runs from Elliott. Thank the maker. Pollard has been the better, more explosive back in Dallas for nearly 2 seasons, and when he finally got his chance, he made the most of it. Over 5 yards per carry on the season, nearly 1,400 total yards, and 12 touchdowns. Check, check, and discount double check. He was dangerous in both the ground and the passing game. He broke tackles and avoided defenders with ease. Pollard was a smash play almost every week in the second half of the season. He dropped outside RB2 range just once over his last 9 games. If you rostered him, you had a massive advantage because of his low cost on draft day. My next MVP at running back is Rhamondre Stevenson. I had him outside of my top 30 backs. He finished as a top 10 guy. Now, I did make a video highlighting Stevenson as a potential league winner as preseason ended, and I was spot on with that call. Rhamondre's season took a few weeks to get underway, but once it did, it was full speed ahead with no stops. The Damian Harris injuries certainly helped his cause, but there's a reason that he was a top 3 ranked back according to PFF over the course of the 2021 season. His talent is obvious, and he even flashed passing game chops this past season as well, something he did not really a year ago. New England's offense was more or less a train wreck, but Stevenson still always found ways to produce. There's no doubt that week 16 and 17 are ones to forget, but Stevenson was so cheap that to finish as a top 10 player at the position speaks volumes to how impactful he was to have on your roster. The next running back who was an MVP is Kenneth Walker. I had him outside of the top 30. He finished as a top 20 guy, even though he didn't get a full season's worth of work. And coming into the year, we all knew that it was going to take an injury from the Seattle backfield to get an opportunity for Kenneth Walker to produce. There was not much of a doubt that he would answer it, if for no other reason the volume in Seattle was going to be huge. He did get that opportunity, and it was a massive workload, but it ended up being even bigger than we could have ever thought possible. Walker thrived behind a young, improving offensive line. Geno Smith's ascension took the pressure off of that backfield. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett did their thing, and all of a sudden the Seattle offense was one of the league's best. If you drafted him, you hit the lottery, and if you signed him off of waivers, it honestly wasn't even fair. Walker did not waste time making an impact once he had the job either. He posted 7 straight RB2 finishes with 4 top 11 performances in that span. Now, he did fade a little bit down the stretch, but he still gave you a top 12 finish for all of the marbles in week 17. Walker was on 13% of championship rosters for a reason. The last running back I am looking at is Jamal Williams. He was outside of my top 45. He barely cracked my top 50, and Williams ended up as an RB1 in 2022. Now, he was definitely carried by his touchdown numbers this year. There's no doubt about it, but it does not matter to owners one bit how the points come. After being an afterthought on draft day, Williams quickly became relevant. He vultured 2 scores in week 1 against Philly. As the season wore on, though, it was clear that his role as the goal line back was no fluke, and with Detroit putting up top 3 scoring numbers, Jamal was always a threat to hit pay dirt. Between DeAndre Swift's health issues and the lack of trust from the coaching staff for Swifty to carry a heavy load, Williams was a consistent 15-touch flex play. He had an incredible 6 games this year with multiple rushing touchdowns. That was the most in the league. And while he was not easy to trust and plug in, he did everything he possibly could have to earn that respect. J. Will did flounder down the stretch. He had 4 straight sub-25 finishes, but he did go off in the championship game, which was big, and rostering the league leader in rushing scores gave you a big leg up on the competition. And that is my list for MVPs at running back. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts and MVPs for your team, so drop those down below. Make sure you like the video as well if you enjoyed the content, and please subscribe to Relentless Press if you have not done so already. We are working our way to our first 1,000 subscribers, and if you have not hit that button yet, you can be a part of that. Keep an eye out for wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks as MVPs as well. I got those videos either already out or coming out shortly. This is Relentless Press. I am your host, Abraham Opatz, and I will see you next time.